Steven Seagal was just another traveler that afternoon. Dressed simply in dark jeans, a jacket, and a cap pulled low over his eyes, he sat alone in a quiet corner of the airport cafe, slowly stirring his coffee. Most people walked past without a second glance. To them, he was just a tall, calm-looking man waiting for his flight. Steven liked it that way. The airport was busy, rolling suitcases, loud announcements, families rushing toward gates. Steven's eyes moved casually across the crowd, not staring, just observing. Years of training had taught him to notice things without making it obvious. That's when he saw her. A little girl, no older than 8, stood a few steps away from him. She looked lost. Her small hands were clenched tightly at her sides, and her eyes kept darting over her shoulder as if she were being watched. She took a step forward, then stopped. Hesitated. Stepped back again. Steven felt it immediately, that quiet instinct that told him something wasn't right. Before he could say anything, the girl suddenly walked straight up to him. She didn't look at his face at first. Instead, she leaned closer and whispered, her voice barely audible over the airport noise. "Please, pretend you're my dad." Steven froze. He slowly turned his head toward her. Up close, he could see her hands shaking. Her breathing was fast and uneven. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a mistake. "Why?" Steven asked gently, keeping his voice low. The girl swallowed hard. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. "He's watching me," she whispered. "I don't know him." Steven didn't look around right away. Instead, he shifted his chair slightly, creating space beside him. "Sit here," he said calmly. "You're safe." The girl climbed onto the chair and pressed herself close to his side, gripping his sleeve like it was the only thing keeping her steady. Only then did Steven lift his eyes and scan the crowd. And that's when he saw the man. Standing near a pillar. Pretending to be on his phone. Watching them. Steven's expression didn't change, but something inside him did. He gently placed an arm around the girl's shoulders, pulling her closer, and said loudly enough for others to hear. "Relax, sweetheart. Dad's right here." The man by the pillar stiffened. And in that moment, Steven knew this was no coincidence. What Steven did next would leave everyone around them stunned. Steven kept his arm around the little girl, not squeezing, not pulling, just enough to let her know she wasn't alone. Her small body was tense, like a coiled spring ready to bolt. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded, but her grip tightened on his jacket. Steven finally allowed his eyes to move freely across the cafe. The man near the pillar hadn't left. He was still there, pretending to scroll on his phone, but his attention never truly drifted. Every few seconds, his eyes flicked toward the girl, toward Steven. Steven had seen that look before. Calm on the surface. Calculating underneath. He leaned slightly toward the girl. "Is he the one you meant?" She didn't look. She didn't have to. Her fingers curled tighter. "Yes." Steven didn't react. No sudden movements. No staring contests. Panic would only make things worse. Instead, he spoke normally, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. "So, kiddo, did you finish your homework like I asked?" he said with a faint smile. The girl played along instantly. "Yes, Dad." Her voice trembled, but she tried to sound normal. A woman sitting at the next table glanced over, sensing something off. A man near the counter slowed his steps. The air around them felt different. Steven casually reached into his pocket and slid his phone onto the table, camera facing outward. He didn't start recording, not yet, but it was ready. The man by the pillar shifted his weight. Then he began to move. Slowly. Casually. Too casually. Steven noticed right away. The girl felt it too. "He's coming," she whispered. Steven stood up smoothly, positioning himself so his body blocked the girl from view. He rested one hand on the back of her chair. "Hey," a voice said behind him. Steven turned. The man stood a few feet away now. Close enough to smell the cheap cologne. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Is there a problem?" Steven asked calmly. The man glanced at the girl. "Yeah. That's my niece." She wandered off. The girl shook her head violently, pressing her face into Steven's side. "I don't know him," she whispered, barely audible. Steven didn't raise his voice. He didn't step back. "She says she doesn't know you," he replied evenly. The man's smile faded for just a second. "Kids get confused. You know how it is." Steven's eyes locked onto his, steady, unblinking. "No," he said. "I don't." Around them, a few people had stopped pretending not to notice. Phones were slowly coming out. Someone whispered, "What's going on?" The man's jaw tightened. "You gonna move, or do we have a problem?" Stephen didn't hesitate. "We have a problem," he said calmly. The girl's breathing grew shallow. Stephen placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. And that's when he decided he wasn't just pretending anymore. If you've ever trusted your instincts when something felt wrong, comment which country and city you're watching from. The man's eyes flicked around the cafe, quickly scanning the faces now turned toward them. Too many witnesses. Too many phones coming out. Stephen noticed it instantly. "This doesn't need to get complicated," the man said, lowering his voice. "She's with me." The girl shook her head harder, burying her face against Stephen's side. "No, please," she whispered. Stephen stepped half a pace forward, not aggressive, just enough to create space. His body became a wall. "She stays right here," Stephen said calmly. The man's smile vanished completely. His voice sharpened. "You don't want to make a scene." Stephen met his stare without blinking. "You already did." A murmur spread through the cafe. "What's going on? Is that guy trying to take her? Someone call security." The man clenched his jaw. "Listen, buddy. You don't know who you're messing with." Stephen exhaled slowly. "I know exactly what I'm dealing with." The man reached out, not fully, just a testing motion toward the girl's arm. Stephen's hand moved faster. Not striking. Not grabbing. He simply caught the man's wrist and stopped it midair. The contact was firm, controlled, undeniable. "Do not touch her," Stephen said quietly. The entire cafe fell silent. The man's eyes widened in shock, not from pain, but from realization. This wasn't some random stranger he could intimidate. "Let go," the man hissed. Stephen didn't tighten his grip. He didn't need to. "Step back," he said. Slowly, the man did. A woman near the counter whispered, "Oh my God." Stephen released the wrist and immediately turned his attention back to the girl. "You're doing great," he said gently. "Stay right behind me." She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. The man took another step back, panic now creeping into his face. "You're gonna regret this." Stephen tilted his head slightly. "No," he replied. "You are." At that moment, a security guard appeared at the edge of the cafe, alerted by the crowd. "What's the situation?" the guard asked. The man opened his mouth to speak, but his story collapsed before it could form. His eyes darted. His breathing quickened. The girl spoke first. "He followed me," she said softly. "I was scared." That was enough. Phones were fully out now. Someone was already on the phone with airport police. The man backed away another step. "This is a misunderstanding." Stephen didn't chase him. He didn't threaten him. He simply stayed where he was, steady, protective, unmovable. The man turned and fled into the crowd. A collective gasp rippled through the cafe. The girl finally broke down, clutching Stephen tightly. "Thank you," she sobbed. Stephen knelt beside her, lowering himself to her level. "You did the right thing," he said. But deep down, Stephen knew something important. This wasn't over yet. If a child asked you for help in a moment like this, would you step in? Comment yes or no. The cafe was buzzing now, but not with ordinary chatter. Every eye was on Stephen and the little girl. Phones hovered in midair, capturing every subtle movement, every quiet word. People instinctively created a wide circle around them, giving space, but also bearing witness. Stephen didn't panic. He never did. Instead, he became a human shield, calm, composed, and alert. One hand lightly rested on the girl's shoulder, the other casually near his side, ready to react if necessary. He didn't make any sudden moves, but the tension in his posture told anyone watching that he was not to be underestimated. The man who had been following the girl lingered near the exit, pretending to tie his shoe, but every glance betrayed his intent. He was sizing up Stephen, calculating whether intimidation could still work. Stephen spoke softly, in a voice both gentle and firm. "You can't just scare a child. You know that, right?" The man's jaw twitched. "She's my niece," he muttered, but the claim sounded hollow, even to him. "Really?" Stephen asked, tilting his head, eyes fixed on him. "Then why is she clinging to me like I'm the only safe person here?" The girl buried her face into Stephen's side. She was trembling, but she trusted him. That trust, fragile, precious, was all Stephen needed to protect her. The crowd was now whispering among themselves. A barista leaned forward, murmuring, "I've never seen anyone handle this calmly, he's not even yelling, and that guy's scared. Someone else chimed in, look at his stance. He's not threatening, but he's like, ready for anything. The man realized his facade was crumbling. Every instinct told him that trying to force the girl away now would end badly. Yet he didn't leave. Not yet. Stephen noticed the hesitation. He stepped slightly closer to the girl, not aggressively, just positioning himself between her and danger. Stay right here, he said softly. I won't let anyone hurt you. The man shifted uncomfortably. He was being watched. Phones were recording, witnesses were observing, and the tension was palpable. At that moment, a young bystander whispered loudly enough for several others to hear, "That's Steven Seagal, isn't it?" Heads turned. Phones shifted. Recognition rippled through the cafe. A few people gasped. Some whispered excitedly. Steven didn't respond. He didn't need to. His calm confidence and commanding presence said everything without a word. Fame wasn't his weapon. Precision, instinct, and courage were. The man's eyes widened as he realized the magnitude of the situation. Not only was he being publicly exposed, but he was now dealing with someone who could read every micromovement, anticipate every action, and protect the child without resorting to threats. Steven gently placed a protective hand on the girl's shoulder again. It's okay. You're safe now. Just stay close to me until this is over. The man took a final step back. His confidence shattered. The authorities were about to arrive. The crowd was fully engaged. And Steven remained a calm eye in a storm of chaos. At that precise moment, everyone watching, the cafe staff, the travelers, the bystanders recording, realized that this wasn't just a simple encounter. Something much larger was unfolding. And Steven Seagal was completely in control. The cafe doors swung open, and two uniformed airport security officers entered, alerted by the growing crowd and the unusual tension. Phones were still recording, and everyone had stopped eating or talking. The moment had captured everyone's attention. One officer approached cautiously. Sir, what's going on here? The man who had been following the girl quickly tried to speak, his voice rushed and defensive. Nothing. She's my niece. She wandered off. The girl shook her head violently, pressing closer to Steven. No. I don't know him. Steven stepped forward, calm but authoritative. She's telling the truth. This man has been following her. She's scared. The first officer raised an eyebrow. Is that true? He asked the man. The man faltered. I just... You're lying, Steven said quietly but firmly, his gaze unwavering. And everyone here can see it. A wave of murmurs swept through the crowd. People whispered among themselves, wow, he's not even raising his voice, and that guy's crumbling. The second officer turned toward Steven. Sir, are you accompanying the child? Yes, Steven replied simply. She asked me to pretend to be her dad. And until her family is found, I'll make sure she's safe. The man's confidence completely evaporated. His breathing quickened. I didn't mean. Steven shook his head. It doesn't matter what you meant. Actions have consequences. At that moment, the girl's mother ran into the cafe, frantic, eyes wide. Honey, are you okay? The girl leapt into her mother's arms, still holding onto Steven's hand for reassurance. Mom, he was following me. I was scared. The mother's eyes filled with tears as she hugged her daughter tightly. She turned to Steven. Thank you so much. Steven simply nodded. It's my responsibility to help when someone's in danger. Security officers led the man away, questioning him while the crowd murmured in approval. Every phone was recording, capturing the entire ordeal. It was clear that Steven had diffused a potentially dangerous situation without violence, without anger, just presence, awareness, and calm authority. People in the cafe began applauding softly, then louder, until it was a chorus of appreciation. Whispers spread rapidly, he saved her, he's a hero. Steven turned to the girl. It's okay now. You're safe. Your family is here. She smiled shyly, a little relief in her eyes. Thank you, Dad. Thank you. Steven gave a faint smile. No need to call me Dad. Just remember, stay alert, trust your instincts, and never be afraid to ask for help. The crowd slowly dispersed, but the story had already begun to ripple outward. Phones would upload videos, news would pick it up, and the courage, calmness, and integrity Steven displayed would inspire millions. Even in a world full of chaos and threats, one man's composure had made all the difference. If you believe real heroes protect the vulnerable without hesitation, type hero in the comments. The airport cafe, once bustling with casual chatter, had transformed into a scene of awe and admiration. Steven Seagal remained calm, a protective presence beside the little girl, while security officers confirmed the situation. The man who had been following the child was quietly being escorted away, his face pale with embarrassment and panic. The girl's mother, still holding her daughter, turned to Steven with tears in her eyes. "I don't even know how to thank you," she said, her voice trembling. You kept her safe." Steven gave a gentle nod. "It's nothing extraordinary. I just did what anyone should do." But it wasn't nothing. The people around them knew it. The way he had diffused the situation, without shouting, without striking, without panic, had been nothing short of extraordinary. Witnesses who had been recording the scene uploaded clips instantly, capturing every tense moment, every subtle movement that had kept the girl safe. One of the security officers, a seasoned man who had seen countless incidents, approached Steven. "Sir, that was incredible. You didn't just protect her, you controlled the situation perfectly. Calm, precise, aware, you're a hero." Steven shook his head slightly. "I'm no hero. I'm just someone who knows how to pay attention." The crowd began whispering excitedly. Phones were held high, recording and live streaming. Passers-by who had stopped to watch were now applauding quietly, some cheering, some wiping tears. "Did you see how calm he stayed?" one said. "He didn't even raise his voice, and that guy completely cracked." The girl's mother finally knelt to her daughter's level. "Sweetheart, you were so brave. And this man," she gestured to Steven. "He protected you." The little girl looked at Steven, her eyes wide with a mix of awe and gratitude. "Thank you, really," she whispered. Steven smiled gently. "You were brave too. Never forget that it's okay to ask for help when you need it." The man who had been following the girl was now fully in the custody of airport security. His lies had been exposed, his intentions clear, and his threat neutralized. Meanwhile, the crowd continued to murmur. One woman whispered, "I can't believe he just stood there, so calm. That's incredible." Another added, "I've seen heroes in movies, but this is real." Steven straightened, finally taking a small step back. The girl's mother wrapped her arms around both of them, forming a protective circle. "You've done more than you know," she said. And in that quiet, powerful moment, everyone present realized something profound. Bravery isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's calm. Sometimes, it's patience. Sometimes, it's simply knowing the right thing to do, and doing it without hesitation. Phones continued to record. Social media posts began to circulate. The story would spread far beyond the airport walls, inspiring countless people around the world with a single, undeniable truth. Courage paired with compassion can change everything. If you believe real heroes protect the vulnerable with calm courage, type hero in the comments. By the time Steven Seagal left the airport cafe, the scene had already gone viral. Videos captured by bystanders circulated online within minutes, spreading across social media platforms like wildfire. The footage showed everything. The moment the little girl approached him, her trembling whisper, Steven's calm protective stance, and the tense interaction with the man who had been following her. Millions of people around the world paused their scrolling to watch, captivated by the quiet courage displayed in front of dozens of witnesses. News outlets picked up the story within hours. Headlines highlighted not just the danger, but Steven's extraordinary composure. "Steven Seagal protects child in airport incident," read one headline. "Action hero shows real-life heroism," read another. On every platform, the public marveled at how one man could defuse a potentially dangerous situation without raising his voice or panicking, simply by being aware, alert, and compassionate. The little girl's story was retold countless times, how she had felt unsafe, how she had approached a stranger for help, and how that stranger had become her protector in an instant. For many, it wasn't just the celebrity factor that made it remarkable. It was the lesson behind it. Bravery isn't about fame or strength. It's about doing the right thing, calmly and without hesitation, when someone needs you most. Interviews with the mother and airport staff reinforced the message. "He didn't just protect her physically," one security officer said. "He controlled the whole environment. Everyone felt safer because of him." The girl's mother added, her voice shaking with emotion, "He treated my daughter like she mattered. He didn't just act as a hero, he reminded us all what responsibility and kindness look like." Online, millions of comments poured in. People wrote about being inspired to help strangers, to trust their instincts, and to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Memes and clips highlighted Steven's calm and commanding presence, and thousands typed the word hero in the comment sections, celebrating the courage that didn't need to shout or threaten, the courage that simply acted. Steven himself didn't seek attention. He avoided interviews and kept a low profile. But he did release a short, simple message. Every child deserves to feel safe. Every person deserves protection when in danger. Courage is not about showing off, it's about doing what's right, even if no one is watching. Trust your instincts, step in when someone needs help, and always act with respect. This message resonated far beyond the airport, spreading across continents. Teachers shared the story in classrooms. Parents told it to their children. Social media influencers highlighted it as an example of real-world heroism. People everywhere realized that heroism is not just in movies or on screens. It is in simple, decisive actions when someone else's safety is at stake. The man who had followed the girl faced consequences for his actions, but Steven never gloated. His focus remained on the little girl and the lesson the world could take from the incident. Dignity, calmness, and courage have a power all their own. By the end of the week, millions of people had watched the videos, shared the story, and reflected on their own actions. It was a reminder that heroism is accessible to everyone. You don't need fame, strength, or fame, you just need awareness, empathy, and the courage to step up when it matters most. If you believe real heroes protect the vulnerable and act with courage, type hero in the comments. Subscribe for more inspiring stories that remind us how ordinary actions can create extraordinary change.